morning, viewers of the Real Stuff podcast. Welcome. This morning, we have another mental health situation. And, we will speak about that throughout the program. But this morning, of course, I have with me my co-host, Courtney, and co-host, Beverly. And we have a very, very special guest this morning, and he will be speaking to us about mental health in the disabled. Morning. Mr. Marshall, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself?
Good morning, Clive and Courtney and Bev. It's a distinct privilege and honor to join the podcast. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity. As you said, my name is Marshall Nunez. I am the Disability Desk Coordinator. I work out of, in Belize, the Ministry of Human Development, Families and Indigenous People Affairs. Just a little introduction of who I am. As a young man, I was very involved with sports. That took me a long way up until a young adult. Professionally, I was a high school teacher. I taught for several years in high school. And then while being a high school teacher, I got involved in media in Belize. Then I later got a little hint in politics, and I was elected at one point as the mayor of Belize City. I do have a visual disability. I've become legally blind as a result of glaucoma and as a consequence of diabetes. I was diagnosed with glaucoma in 2021, and by 2009, I've lost most of my sight. So I've since then been engaged with working with persons with disabilities until, well, I was once the president of the Belize Assembly of Persons with Disabilities, which is essentially an umbrella organization for NGOs that works with persons with disabilities. And then on March of 2021, I was employed by the government to run the disability desk, and since then we have been doing what needs to be done for the most part.
Okay, yes, Bev, you want to take it away, Bev?
Repeat that?
You want to take it away?
Yeah. Good morning, Flavors, Courtney, Marshall, and the world at large. I am pleased that we have Mr. Marshall on this morning to talk about the challenges that the differently able people sometimes go through with mental health. As you can see, he has a wide range of experience, and he knows firsthand what he's talking about. So I'm sure he'll enlighten us on what they're doing, what is happening in Belize, and how we can make more changes to improve the lives of the people who are differently abled. So thank you, Mr. Marshall. It's all yours.
I just identify myself that I am not really a specialist on mental health, although mental illness is also a disability. And so in Belize, I guess like in other jurisdictions, it is a challenge. For us in Belize, there is a gap in terms of services and even facilities that caters to persons who are suffering with mental health or with mental illness. Mental illness in Belize, I guess like in other countries, is as a result of, some of it is genetic. Quite a bit of it are people who suffer from substance abuse. But the community for a wide area seems to have been invisible. And I think in the evolving time, we cannot continue to have people with mental illness appear to be invisible, because they're people, their families, loved ones, and we also have to take care of them. They are a part of our society, and so we have a moral and a legal obligation to look at their well-being. And so the conversation has to be health versus mental illness, and we wanted to move in the direction of more mental health, addressing the deficiencies that exist and treating it as if though it's an illness, just the way we treat any other health illnesses.
I agree with you. Can I ask what's the I know you guys are working on getting the law passed in the House. So what's the update on that?
When I got involved, or when I was employed by the ministry, and you know, even though we are on this international podcast, I need to give credit to Indelive's Minister Dolores Balderramos Garcia, who is the Minister of Human Development, Family and Indigenous People Affairs,
Okay.
as well as the CEO, the Chief Education Officer, the Chief Executive Officer in the ministry, Mr. Tanya Santos. They were very receptive to the idea, and they ensured that I was employed in this position. Coming from NGO community prior to being employed by the government, we were doing a lot of advocacy for and on behalf of persons who are living with disabilities. But when I got the opportunity to work with the government, and part of the term of conditions for my employment is that I need to advise the government on ways that can help them to improve the quality of life for people who are living with disabilities. As a result of that, I recognize that advocacy alone will not do it. And the two parallel highways to the improving the quality of living for people with disabilities are advocacy and legislation, and it's going to be difficult for them to exist one without the other. And so as soon as that involves, I realized that we have to work towards establishing legislation. And so as disabilities coordinator, I was able to coordinate the stakeholder agencies, the NGOs, and there are about 30 or so of them existing in Belize, who are doing their own individual work addressing the life of people who are living with disabilities. And so I was able to coordinate those stakeholder agencies along with the line ministries that are relevant with this, in this work, which includes the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So we started the process of, or the discussion and conversation towards the establishment of a national disability policy. In November of last year, we held the first ever National Disability Conference in Belize, which served as a consultation with all the stakeholders, and the presenters at that conference included people both locally, regionally, and internationally. What we do, we were able to adapt the theme of the conference to the community-based rehabilitation matrix, which look at those 5 thematic areas: the area of education, of health, social protection, employment, and empowerment. And so we were able to do that. So that started the conversation towards the establishment of a policy. We are working on that policy document right now. We are hoping that within the next several months, we will be able to have a document that we can send to the cabinet that they will be able to peruse and approve. And once they're able to establish that policy, then we march forward towards putting legislation in place that is going to protect the rights and quality of living of the population of people who are living with disability in the country.
Okay, thanks. That's a good update for us to know what is happening at this point in time. Another question I have is, I know when you were with BAPTA, the group for disabled, the NGOs, I should say, for the
Yes.
people with disabilities, are they a part of, what's the word I should say? Are they being considered when we are talking about how we can improve our services in Belize?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have, as I said, we have various stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, my secretary, Ms. Roxanne Marin, was the past president of BACTA. Actually, I was the president before her. So the two past presidents of BACTA are working here related to this. Myself as the coordinator and Ms. Roxanne as secretary. I think
So we have the two best people to represent this group
absolutely,
right now.
absolutely,
I like that. That's good to hear.
absolutely.
I have a big question.
Sure.
Is Belize disabled ready?
That's an excellent question. Let me first just complete the response with Beth, and then I'll go to respond.
Okay,
That.
great.
When Belize signed the Convention for the Persons with Disability, the recommendation or the organization that was used for us to sign on to the convention was BACTA.
Okay.
So that is essential in the work for persons with disability within the country.
Okay.
Belize signed on to the UN Convention in May of 2011, and then we ratified that convention in June of 2011, just a little over a month later.
Okay.
To the question of whether Belize is disabled ready, I will say within the past year, we are above 50% in terms of our readiness. We have come a long way in a short while, but there is much more work to do. To expound on responding to that question, since taking office in March of 2021, we went out in coordination and collaboration with the stakeholders, and we did a lot of sensitization training, as well as the training for people to understand disability etiquette. And so we immediately after being employed, I was employed on March 15th of 2021, and March 26th of 2021, just 3 weeks after municipal elections in the country, I was able to address the Mayors Association of Belize. I presented to the mayors and asked them if they can adopt disability services within their municipalities. Belize has 9 municipalities. We have 2 major cities, and in Belize we refer to them as towns. We have 7 towns, and I'm pleased to mention that all 9 municipalities were receptive, and so now we have one of the councilmen or councilperson in each municipality who takes disability as a portfolio of responsibility, disability services.
That's very good.
Wonderful, yes, it is.
Sorry?
Well, that is wonderful.
Yes. About a month after being employed, I reached out to very many people, including the National Emergency Management Organization in Belize. And by July, just a few months after I was brought to the desk, I was also appointed as the chairperson for the National Special Needs and Disability Subcommittee, which is a new emergency management organization. That committee, our members and co-chairs of that committee included the president of the National Association of Village Councils. In terms of our geography, we have just under 200 villages. And so the president of the Association of Village Council, we also reached out through him to the villages. And so all the councils from those 190 plus villages become engaged and apprised of disability services. So we have created essentially a full national network. Those are administrative, but in terms of inclusivity and accessibility, we still have some ways to go.
That's very good. That's a big step.
Yes, and they're moving fast.
Yeah, it is.
I know Jamaica is way behind, and they are now trying to put things in place because we had some problems with sidewalks. Wasn't really ready, you know, because you have like a light pole in the middle of the sidewalk, so disabled people like on a wheelchair and all that. In fact, somebody died some time ago with that.
Okay.
And our buildings are definitely not friendly at all, our buildings, you know,
Okay.
wheelchair friendly or otherwise, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have another question.
Morning, everyone.
Your national thing seems to be progressing very nicely. But is there a Caribbean association that everyone comes under that looks out for the disabled in the region?
Yes, yes. Since coming to this desk, I was able to become engaged with the Caribbean leaders, the group of stakeholders representing countries within the region. We were also introduced to the International Disability Alliance, and we're also affiliated to the Community-Based Rehabilitation Global Network. It is incumbent of me to mention that Dr. Floyd Morris, who is Jamaican, he's the head of the University of the West Indies Center for Disability Studies. He's also the CARICOM rapporteur to the United Nations. He a part of the committee that wrote the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons who are living with disabilities. He has become a very close colleague of mine. In fact, when we did a conference in November, he was the keynote speaker. He's a giant when it comes to addressing the needs and the quality of life for persons with disabilities. In July of 2021, my Minister Dolores Valderramos has afforded me the opportunity. I attended a ministerial conference that was looking at non-discrimination of persons with disability through legislation. Under the guidance of Dr. Morris, he created a template for legislation for the Caribbean countries, because the push is to hope that in the future, I think we're looking at estimated time of about 2030, that all Caribbean countries should have similar legislations, kind of a unified legislation within the region to address the rights and quality of life for a person with disability within this region.
Courtney,
Yes, Flavius.
you have been very quiet, man.
Okay, Mr. Nunez, I have a question for you. You know, because since you were on the point of the facilities for the disabled, I am more looking at like the physical training facilities, because we know that mental health affects all of us, whether we are able or disabled. And, you know, but I noticed like in the physical training places that I have seen, there's hardly any equipment or any place set out for a person who is physically disabled. What is being done in Belize in that respect?
And I said again, an excellent question. And I think a few moments ago, we spoke about the matter of the sidewalks. In Belize, we have that same challenge. The sidewalks, for the most part, are inadequate. They have slopes, they raise and fall, and it becomes very challenging for persons who are using wheelchairs, and for even those who are walking with canes and walkers, and so it's challenging. In Belize, fortunately for us in Belize, we had a change of government in November of 2020, and the Prime Minister of Belize, Dr. John Briceño, his wife is a special needs, she's special needs trained. She used to run an inclusive school, and was very involved in the education ministry in terms of strengthening special needs aspect of the Ministry of Education. I sound like I deviate a little bit, but the political will from this government is there to address the matter of the quality of life for persons with disabilities. I'm saying all of that to say this. Our Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing, in Belize, we have what is called as a Central Building Authority. And then the municipalities have what are referred to as local building authorities. We have reached out to those organizations, and we are in discussion with them to have representation on those authorities by persons who are living with disabilities. So when it goes to accessibility and inclusivity, especially in terms of the buildings, that we want to have a stake so that the buildings that are built will be accessible. There is an organization known as the Social Investment Fund that exists within Belize. Over the past year or so, they have built several school buildings, and the school buildings in Belize coupled as hurricane shelters if there is need for it during disasters. The emphasis was, and the execution is, to make those schools, that the new buildings were completely accessible with adequate ramps, wheelchair accessible bathrooms. And the part of the advocacy is to make sure that once buildings are, new buildings pop up, especially public buildings, that they are accessible with universal access. I hope I addressed your question a bit.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, you did.
Continue.
Can I do something? I want to welcome the people who have joined us. We have Steve Miles from BAPTA, we have Elvira, and we have Ms. Zaida. So I want to welcome you guys and say, if you want to contribute, you just raise your hand and we can acknowledge you if you have any questions to ask.
And Bev, you have a Sabrina also.
Repeat that.
You have a Sabrina.
What, Sabrina? Okay, welcome, Sabrina. And I'm glad we're having this conversation so people can know what is happening as Mr. Marshall shares his views and his experience in this topic. Welcome, Sabrina.
Mr. Marshall, question.
Yes,
back to the mental health, but not directly mental health, but how have been disabled persons in Belize, how have they coped in the past 2 years of the pandemic? What are the hardships in that community?
I missed part of the question.
And for the past 2 years plus, we have been the COVID-19. How have the disabled community coped with that? And was there any additional hardship for disabled persons?
Absolutely. It was a challenge. It was a challenge for persons with disabilities. Even prior to the pandemic and prior to COVID. And I think COVID just kind of accentuated the need to have, to provide greater service. In Belize, transportation is inadequate in terms of the accessibility. And so even though there was sufficient and accessible vaccination and that type of thing, it was very difficult for persons living with disability to go out and get that. We tried from the desk to advocate on their behalf, and the Ministry of Health were able to create a mobile unit that went out and reached out to people who were homebound, for the lack of a better term, to go there and give them the vaccination or even provide testing for them when it would have been necessary. But to the root of that question, there is still greater need for them to have access, for the population to have access, especially as it relates to transportation. Our public transportation, for the most part, isn't adequate, especially for disabled people who are users of wheelchairs and other physical disabilities. If I can just go back, last year as well, in collaboration with some of the NGO stakeholders, we did training for people who work in the transportation industry, the workers at the bus terminals, the traffic wardens, and even some bus operators. We did some training in terms of the sensitization and the etiquette of disability with a view to have them understand and were able to identify and approach persons who are living with disability, especially for those people who are living with invisible disability like autism and ADHD and those type of things that are not seen, as well as for people who have mental illness.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know.
Okay, Mr. Nuñez. So what is the effort being done to retrofit these public transportation for the physically challenged people?
Tremendous effort. As a matter of fact, last year I was introduced to a couple of investors, and in my conversation with them, I posed this very same shortage that we have in terms of accessibility in public transportation. And I'm very pleased to announce that I'm preempting an event that is coming up. But they donated through this desk in the ministry a 40-seater wheelchair accessible bus that will be handed over to my minister next week, Wednesday.
Wow, congratulations.
Wow.
Thanks. I also met with an engineer from the US, and he went back. I met with him in February. He went back to the United States, and he's working on a design. In Belize, most of our public transportation are the school bus type buses. And he will be looking at a way where, in a very cost-effective way, they may be able to use a quick release method to convert maybe the last couple seats in those school buses by quick release to convert them from the regular seats to wheelchair access.
Wow.
Working on that, and then once that is a workable plan, then we will try to see if there will be an incentive program in country to encourage the bus operators to make that conversion for their buses.
Wow, that's very good.
Wow.
And
You're
those
making big steps.
buses have, those buses have a back door. They have two doors.
They have a back door, the back door.
Okay.
So
The wheelchair would enter from the back door.
From the back,
Okay,
yes.
wonderful. That is great news. And I must invite you to get us involved on Wednesday. You can bring us on so we can, we can broadcast your big step.
Absolutely, definitely. In fact, I am really grateful for the opportunity to do that. I'm certainly going to.
Thanks. It's good to know what is happening.
We'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. Yes, yes.
Well,
And show the rest of the Caribbean what is happening, and they have to, they have to start doing all these things, because you don't understand, you know, that apart from the people who are living in the Caribbean with disability, we have lost a lot of money coming into the Caribbean through tourism because we are not disabled ready. You have a lot of disabled people in the world who would love to come to the Caribbean, but there's no facility. You go to hotel, you know, how they get to their rooms, things like that.
Yeah.
True.
So we have to look at it in a much bigger picture than we are now. We have to get the things in place so the citizens can benefit, but also it's a whole new industry that we can start.
That is
You
true.
know, because these people are people that work, they have the money, and they want to take their holidays. And of course, everybody want to come to the Caribbean.
Yeah, that is
When they
true.
investigate, this is not in place, we don't have any buses, the transportation does not, you know, afford us, you know, all these things that is required, necessary. So it's something, it's another angle for us to look at and see what we can do and make the whole thing much better than it is now.
Yeah, that is true. I agree.
That is true, and as
Yes.
you write, that is common to all of the Caribbean countries.
Oh yes, it definitely is. Definitely is.
In Belize,
Any involvement from any of our other guests?
Steve, Sabrina,
No?
Zaidi, anybody else? Any questions? Any comments?
Anybody want to say something?
I guess not.
if there are no questions, then I can maybe make some other contributions.
Yes, please
Yeah,
do.
man, go ahead.
A part of the conversation is the matter of employment for persons who are living with disability. And under the empowerment aspect of the community-based rehabilitation, it speaks about employment, but also for persons who are living with disability to create their own employment. When we organized the conference in November last year, we collaborated with the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce came in, and as a part of their putting their money where their mouth is, they were able to provide a grant fund for a suitably qualified who is living with a disability. And I'm pleased to say that a young man from the Corozal district, Mr. Miguel Bejarano, one day, he's blind, but he repairs and program electronic devices. And he also provides training for other blind people to be able to navigate their devices. So that's a really a program. And there are other persons who are living with disability who are making good as employers and creating their own employment. We have also had a meeting with the Department of Labor, and there is an ongoing conversation. The Department of Labor has an employment agency. We started discussion with them because we want to create a tab on their portal where it's going to direct you directly to people who are looking for employment. So it's going to be a disability employment agency section of the Department of Labor employment.
That's very good to know. Interesting information.
Yes,
Marshall, can I ask you another question?
sure.
We want to talk about mental health. So can
Sure.
I ask if we have anything in place, if somebody needs some counseling, like for example, we know with COVID we've been housebound for almost 2 years, and it's affecting some people mentally and affect their lives in different ways. So what are we at the disability desk doing for people to deal with their mental health at this time?
One of our coordinate stakeholder agencies, Mind Health Connect, and they look at providing services to persons who are living with disability. The Ministry of Human Development, from which I work, we also community rehabilitation department. That department provides counseling for persons who have mental issues not to be addressed, as well as the government. The government have been providing counseling services for persons who work within the government as well. Over maybe 6 months or so, there has been many other organizations and agencies who have put mental illness on the forefront. The cabin fever that existed over the past 2 months really and truly make it necessary for that aspect of health to be addressed. And so we need to see mental illness just the way how we look at COVID-19.
I agree, because before it wasn't recognized as an illness, but now we are talking about bringing these conversations to our forefront. It is important to acknowledge that almost all of us do at some point or the other have some mental breaks. I would put it. So that is where we need to also encourage others who need counseling or assistance or direction and guidance to contact these facilities to get the assistance that they need, so they can bring their life back to a normal point as such.
You know, Abel, and words matter, because, and if you notice, we are discussing mental health.
Yes.
We don't have a mental health problem. We have mental illness challenges. And for words matter, we have to start to put things in context, because we need to address mental illness so that we can bring people to mental wellness.
Exactly.
Although it's common and is well used, I think it understates the need for us to look at mental illness in an effort to bring it towards mental wellness.
That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that point. Right on. I appreciate that. Courtney, Flavors, any questions, any comments?
Well, the program is about to end now. I would ask Mr. Nuñez if he could arrange for the senator in Jamaica to be on the program with him sometime soon, Mr. Floyd Morrow.
I will do my endeavor best. I will do my endeavor best. I think that would be a very important conversation. I'll try my best to do that, to arrange that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and anybody else that you could bring, so we have like 4 people, you know, as it relates to disabilities in the Caribbean. I think we need to look at it, and if, you know,
let me just
get somebody in the tourism space. Yes,
let me
check it out and get back to us, please. Yeah.
Sorry, let me just forewarn you that if we bring Dr. Floyd Morris to the show, you don't need me. He's the expert.
No, we still need you, man. You still need you. You will know
certain
questions that you could bring. Yeah.
No, not a problem.
You could start some conversation.
Not a problem. I'll be honored to be on the show with Dr. Floyd.
Well, please, if you could arrange it and, you know, speak to Bev. And,
definitely.
You know,
so we could do
what we can achieve with that.
Yeah.
Courtney, you want to sum it up for us and get out of here?
Okay, we'll do. Okay, earlier on in the beginning, when we spoke with Mr. Nuñez, he spoke about the advocacy and legislation must work hand in hand, you know, to achieve the improvement of mental health in the disabled or the physically challenged. He further spoke about the need for public education to highlight the problem and to come to solutions to these problems. He also spoke about, the Caribbean and the regional activities that are and initiatives that are being presently in place. And that was a very interesting topic that we need to extend on sometime in the future. You also made a point about, the building, especially public buildings, that need to be equipped for, the physically handicapped or physically disabled people. And we also look at, in closing, the importance of counseling for mental illness in all people.
Yeah, true.
Especially for the physically challenged people. So I just want to take this time to say thank you, Mr. Nuñez, and thank you for us expressing, what you have said in such an eloquent fashion. So back to you, Flavors.
Thank you very much. And as soon as you're ready, Mr. Nunez, we would love to have you back. And thanks to my co-host, go ahead, Mr. Nunez.
No, I just want to say thank you also very much for the opportunity to appear, and I received the invitation with excitement. I'll continue to remain, I'll keep this line of communication open.
Wonderful. And your closing remarks, Bev?
Thanks, Flavors. Thanks, Courtney, for having this podcast so we can express this, the viewpoint of people around the world. Marshall, thanks so much for making yourself available for this meeting. I know you have a very busy schedule, as I've been informed over and over again. But I'm glad you were able to make this meeting and express to us what is happening in Belize and the world and what is going on. We ask you to keep on doing the good work you're doing and to keep us updated on what is happening. Thanks to you and your staff. Thanks to your ministry, your minister, your CEO, and everybody who is doing the great work to keep it up and to keep us informed of what is happening. Thanks again for having this podcast, Courtney and Flavors. And thanks to the world for watching. Have a beautiful day wherever you are.
Okay, and from the Real Stuff podcast, thank you all for staying with us. And we must ask you all to subscribe to the channel. Very important for us to keep doing this every day. We need your support. So if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe and let our subscription grow. Until next time, I know.
Thank you for inviting me too.
Yeah. Oh yes. You're welcome.
Thanks very much. The meeting is. I hope it be a success in the future.
Oh
thank
yes.
You.
Thank you very much.
Like, subscribe, and share to the channel, please.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. God bless.
As we move out until tomorrow, we'll ask Queen Lubafu with the Garafuna, our father, and Tafina to take us out. Thank you very much.
You lead us to Fula. You belong far away away. Ajuguala Lebabu Seru. Lead Amua, lead us to Fula. Lead Amua, lead us to Fula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer sorrow. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me know set me a go flee. Me have to take away me say. Me have to take when me say, me have to hide like a thief in the night. Me have to get out of sight.